But speaking of kings of New York from the radio world, I have a theory about Opie lately.
Okay.
That I find very strange, in that I checked out one of his podcasts and I noticed he picked up this habit of, I don't know if it was a pen or his coffee cup or whatever, but he kept doing this when he was doing the show, and he'd be like, yeah, I seen the thing and it was great, and I had the thing and yeah, and so he started tapping the microphone, and I've noticed that he'll deliberately, his camera will be sort of like off center, so he's talking like a fucking 1960s Batman. And yeah, so his show has actually gotten worse. So I have a theory, and I don't know if you ever thought about this, Chad or Karl, that do you think that Opie has begun to troll the audience?
Well, I don't think that, and I'll tell you why I don't think that. But I'm interested to hear your theory. Opie has actually done something in the last, I don't know, half a year or so, where he's hired people to work for him and try to build up his YouTube presence. And if you go to his YouTube page now, you will see all the thumbnails are done up. He's got all these little video clips that he pulls out of his live streams, pieces together. There's some production there. It's cheesy, but there's some production there. And he's trying to get clickbaity titles and talking about Joe Rogan sucks and Anthony's the worst person to ever live and Sam Roberts could eat a dick. So he's got all these things that are going to get people on there clicking. Yeah. He's got these other people are going to come on there and click. So I think he's trying to build an audience. I don't think he's trying to push them away, but he doesn't know how to. He doesn't know how to be interesting, and you're right. He's annoying. These habits that he has is cheers. I want to fucking smash my computer screen every time he does the cheers thing. So I think he is trying to still be relevant and hold on to some type of relevancy and have some type of audience. But I know what you mean, man. It's hard to watch. It's difficult.
Yeah, it's hard for me. I'm sorry. I got to interrupt, Adam. It's this is hard for me. I've been an Opie supporter and sympathizer for a long time. And, even going back to when you first originally started covering him, I mean,
hold on a second. I have a question for you.
Yes.
What? All right, go ahead.
No, I felt, because I felt like this is a guy that we just couldn't let him go away, right? If he just went off into the sunset, and he did those calls with Anthony, and then it didn't work that he went to Compound. If he just went off into the sunset, none of this would have happened. And I just feel like it's punching down so bad now, because it is. I just was looking at the channel. Some of these videos have 400 views or 800 views.
That's a lot better than what he was doing before. Yeah.
But it's stuff that your beginner YouTube should be doing when they're just trying to make a name for themselves. And I see the same thing, but he just can't catch a break, because even when he tries, it's not good enough, and it sucks, and it ends up backfiring and makes him look worse. So I feel bad for the guy in a way, but I think that the clickbaity stuff is kind of helped maybe give him a sense that he's in the fight, even though I don't think he is.
Yeah, he definitely still feels very highly about himself, which is weird, because if he ever actually sat down and watched back one of his videos, which I'm sure he doesn't do, it's so cringy. You'd have to think, there used to be PDs when you're in radio. You would have to sit down with your PD from periodically, and they would do an air check, and they would say, okay, let's listen to this segment. Let's talk about what went well, what didn't go well, and then try to coach you on, maybe you have some crutches or things that don't work with the audience. They get some feedback, things like that. Opie needs that more than anyone right now. He needs someone to go down and just go, these voices that you do, these non sequiturs, it's just not working. His format, not working. Responding to the chat is all he can do anymore. He doesn't even have people on to interview or anything like that. And this is where I don't know if I agree with your point saying that he could have just gone off and been obscure. He was hired by Westwood One to do a podcast.
Yeah, good point.
If were offered a job for Westwood One to do a podcast, we'd work our balls off to make it successful. We have this huge company behind us. They have a lot of celebrities on their network, and they have a lot of big podcasts. And what Opie did is he took a Zoom recorder and walked around the streets of New York with his one funny friend and yelled at homeless people. It's like, dumb, this is not a show format. You're fucking up. Why are you doing this?
But Westwood One, it backfired that whole entire model, because all those shows sucked. They did it for wrestling, they did it for entertainment, they did it for comedy, and everybody that they brought on was terrible. And Opie, I guess they just thought, okay, yeah, maybe he'd give it a little bit more. But when I mean right up into the sunset, I mean if he wasn't going to talk about the haters or talk about the old Opie and Anthony stuff, if he was just going to do the hey buddy or whatever they used to call it each other, him and the guys, if he was just going to do that, he would have been out of sight, out of mind. But he couldn't help, he couldn't help but fight back.
Guys like that need the spotlight, and that's why I'm actually surprised that Stuttering John has gone away for as long as he have. A lot of people have been predicting that he'd be back sooner because guys like that, they need that audience. They need to be talking to people. And Opie seems like a pretty lonely guy, just from what I've seen. I could be wrong.
He's got the dog.
I know he's got his family and the doggy, but he seems very lonely.
But have you noticed lately that Opie can't even stick to his own opinion about Anthony Cumia, the Ant-Man?
What do you mean?
Yeah, well, stuff like if you look at one of his videos, he'll put up a video about Anthony, the Ant-Man, where he'll say something like, "Oh, Anthony never really added anything to the show. Everybody else did it." And then the next day, he'll put up a video about Anthony, the Ant-Man, and he'll say something like, if it wasn't for Anthony, there would have been no comedy in the show. And it's like, so what did he add stuff to it or didn't he? And that's why I think he's trolling the audience, because he knows this is all they're going to click on. So as long as I know to praise him one day, shit on him the next, I'll get the views. Yeah,
but to what end? Why would you troll your own audience? What's the end game there? I'm not saying that Opie's calculated and strategic, but what's the point of doing that?
I think that for Opie, he just needs to hit a certain view per upload, a view count per upload that'll keep him sane.
So he's not trolling the audience. He's just grasping at anything. He's just like, what can I say? There'll be people watching. I'll say that Anthony's a pedophile. I'll say that Anthony murdered children and they're in his basement. He's just whatever comes up on the top of his head, he's saying so that people will watch his show. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, he'd probably say some negative stuff about him too.
And some negative
stuff. What's the number he wants? What, 50, 60? Like what you're saying, he wants a certain number. Where's the bar?
Yeah.
They're kind of low at the moment. So, I mean, where do we go from here? But,
it's numbers too.
Yeah, whenever he talks about Howard is the one where obviously there's a ton of shit and venom between him and Anthony, but I think the Howard ones are where there's a lot of that really inside the gut, like visceral hatred because he wanted to be Howard and he sees that Howard is on such an elite level. Again, Opie sympathizer, still love the guy, in my heart and in my soul forever.
Hold on, Chad, why? Opie's an asshole. I'm
talking about when I listen to this show, I look, put me in the minority. I don't care. I got, everybody's got an opinion.
No, I know. I understand that. But that's not a good defense. Okay. I have my own opinion. Why would you sympathize for a guy who was a dick to everyone he worked with to the point where none of them will talk to him anymore? They all despise him.
Because I can sympathize with being the top guy, being the boss, and being somebody who gets a lot of somebody who gets a lot of shit. But that's it. That's where it stops. The fighting back and the stuff that makes you look bad, that's terrible, and he's got to stop it. But I think that the stuff that he does about Howard is even worse than the stuff that he does about Anthony, because that's where there's that deep-seated jealousy that he never got past being able to go off on his own. Everybody who left Howard is Howard. Everybody left Opie is a little bit below Howard now.
That's why he still loves Ron Bennington, because Ronnie's great, and Ron's show was never as big as Opie and Anthony, obviously. But you could tell he really hates Joe Rogan now, and he really hates Howard.
Oh, yeah.
And those guys he goes after quite a bit because there is that jealousy element. He's going, why is Howard being paid this much money to still be on the radio? Why is Joe Rogan have this many listeners? I'm better than both of them. How is this possible? And he can't figure out that they're both better than him.
Oh,
that's the answer.
It truly is crazy, and it's like I'd love to know what is the end game, because I think honestly that if Sam Roberts or Jim Norton or Anthony Cumia, the Ant-Man, give Opie the call, he would do it. Like, he would actually come on the show. He would go to their live show. He would do something just so that he has anything to talk about. Opie has nothing to talk about. He hasn't even started is fascinating. I'm trying to wrap the gifts in the seat, sellotape, and the whoop, and the fit, and the cut, and the split, and the wrap, and the yeah.
He would take the call, but I don't think he would do anything with it. He just complained about they called. Oh, they want me to do this. Oh, they want me back so bad. He wouldn't do anything with the call.
Well, Adam, I have to tell you, I didn't clip this because I had too much content for my last episode, but I was listening to Opie's latest live stream, and the story he was telling was about going to the movie theater with his son and bitching about the cost of candy at the movie theater. With the tickets and the candy were up $60. This movie better be good. So you're right. He has nothing to talk about. There's nothing going on in his life. There's nothing interesting. And if you want to be a broadcaster and you want to just talk about random shit, you better have an interesting lifestyle or something going on. Now, to the point about whether or not he would show up there, let's not forget Keith the Cop, when he was still running Compound Media, really wanted to reunite Opie and Anthony. And they were already had a falling out. And Keith the Cop got Opie to go to Compound Media and showed him around because he was trying to offer him a gig. Opie went. And that, let's not forget about that. He might bitch about it now, but he took that call and he did show up to that appointment. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think he would do something.
But that was years ago, though. They were still kind of they did the call. That's where they did those, simulcast calls, and everything looked like it was like right here. And that was a cool video. Yeah, that was a cool video when he was in there and he was showing, oh, look where I am. And it gave you that, oh, maybe once a month, something like that. But then it's like, whoo, it just says, wow, gone off the cliff since then.
Oh, yeah. The shit that he's talked about, Jim and Sam, I can't imagine he would want to be in the same room with either of those guys at this point.
No, never.
When you're hanging out with Anthony, the Ant-Man, does he ever mention Opie off air?
Oh, well, I talked to him about Opie, yeah.
Oh, any scoop?
It's not like Anthony's like, oh, Karl, let me tell you this story about Opie. It's not like that. But the thing that Anthony and I have in common is goofing on Stuttering John and Opie and maybe chatting Zoom out from time to time. So we do get into those conversations. And the cool thing about Anthony is that he's an open book. So I'm not going to tell you any private conversation I had with Anthony about Opie that he hasn't said on his show already. I mean, everything, all of his beefs with Opie, he's made very clear, and he's not holding anything back.
Do you ever call him the Ant-Man to his face?
I've never done that. That's your thing.
Does he ever mention me?
That's all he wants to talk about. He's like, when are we going to Ireland, Karl? I'm like, I know, I got to save up. I'm trying to get there, buddy. We'll go together one of these days.
A lot of cocaine over there.
Does he ever talk about me?